Your resume is the first thing that you are being judged on when you apply for a role. But most recruiters spend less than 10 seconds scanning it before deciding whether to keep reading. In this video, I'm going to share with you how to make your resume stand out and catch the hiring manager's attention so that it's you they're calling to interview rather than anybody else. So before I start, I might drop between saying resume and CV because I am British. But please know if you're American and watching this, it's the same thing. Your resume is your absolute best marketing tool, highlighting everything from your skills, your experiences, qualifications, and communicating your value to your potential employer. It's such a competitive job market right now. So getting this document right can hugely increase your chances of landing interviews and that all important role. Now, the whole point of your CV is to capture attention, but not to tell your career life story. It's just enough to get the interview where you can then go into that and wow them. Now, before we start fixing your CV, I need to ask you a few questions as this is going to be important for you to reflect on and think about before we can start crafting it. So the first one is, what roles am I applying for? Are they entry level, management, senior positions? You also need to ask yourself, what does this industry value? And thirdly, ask yourself, what do I want employers to feel when they read my CV? Now, different roles will need different language used whilst writing it. So, if you're at a specialist level, you need to really talk about how hands on you are in delivery, or your technical contribution, or the learning curve that you've gone through and the ownership that you started to take on of projects. But with leadership, it's all about strategy, decision making, and also how you influence teams. So, by focusing on the level of role, you can then identify the audience that you're speaking to and start writing what they need to hear. Now let's talk about the structure. There are so many ways that you can structure your resume, and I have seen several throughout my career. There is not a one size fits all. But today, I will talk you through a basic, no nonsense structure that's timeless so that you can use it again and again throughout your career. Now, in an ideal world, I would suggest your name and your contact details at the top, your opening statement, your key skills or your expertise and achievements, and then diving into your career history, your education and certifications, and your hobbies and your interests. Now, within your resume, it has to be able to communicate three things: what you do, what you've delivered, and where you add value. These elements, they're all key because they allow potential employers to quickly grasp what you've done specifically and learn how it can help solve their problems, because that's what it's all about. They want to know how, if I'm hiring this person, is this person going to take headaches off of my hands? And that's what your resume needs to articulate. Finally, it should go without saying, but honesty and relevance are really key. Your resume should reflect your current skills and your experiences. So it's important to stay current rather than relying on accomplishments from a decade ago if you've then not touched on them in years, or rather than over embellishing your experience, because unfortunately it will come back to bite you and it becomes very obvious quickly in the interview if you can't actually do what you've shared, or if you don't have the depth of knowledge that your resume suggested you do. So let's get in to your personal information. Now, it's quite an obvious one, I know, but the recruiter has to know who they're looking at, and you don't want to look at a CV and wonder where in the world to find the personal information or how to contact you. So, although it sounds obvious, make sure you have this information at the top of the page. Some people tend to include it at the footer of your CV in a faded tone, but in my opinion, you can't go wrong with it right at the top: obvious, hard to miss, easy to reach. So, let's have a look at the resume. At the top of the page, you want your name, your postcode, your phone, your email, and a link to your LinkedIn page, but only if your LinkedIn profile is good. You definitely don't need your full address. Your postcode and the area that you live will be perfectly fine. And also, if you're open to relocation, make sure that you state this here too. One thing that you definitely don't need is your date of birth, because you don't want any reason for a company to practice age bias. So if you have your date of birth in your resume currently, then take it out. Now, I know I am sounding stupidly simple with this advice, but please make sure that your contact information is correct. So, no misspellings on the email, no digits short on your personal number, because not only will the recruiter not be able to reach you even if they want to, but I've also had hiring managers deny moving forward because it shows that for one of the most important documents that you're sending out to future employers, that you're not proofreading and you're not checking it thoroughly. So, Don't let something so simple trip you up, and make sure you're double checking that your email address and your contact number is correct. Also, a really quick tip when you're saving your CV, a lot of people will save it and they'll say, my resume, my CV, or draft 6. So once you've got your final draft that you're happy with, it's best to save it as first name, last name, resume. Hiring managers sometimes forward those resumes internally, and it makes a really good impression seeing just your name and your last name rather than seeing it was your 6th draft. Even if it was, they don't need to know this, so stick with the format I've suggested. Finally, 2 more very short points on your contact detail. With your email, make sure it is professional. So Sex Machine 69, the one that you used at university, it probably isn't going to cut it anymore, believe me. I have seen emails like that, I am not kidding. And alongside your email, make sure your voicemail sounds professional too. You know those voicemails where they trick you into thinking they've answered when they haven't? Don't do that. Get it ready as if your dream employer is calling you, and make sure it's something you'd be happy with them hearing. If in doubt, just have your phone provider's standard voicemail and leave it at that. Next up, we have your opening statement. So we want a really powerful opening statement. Don't use basic run-of-the-mill statements that you found on Google or ChatGPT. For example, I'm a good team player or works well individually and as part of a team. Instead, your opening statement should highlight exactly who you are and exactly what you do. A quick, easy to follow guide that your opening statement can follow is your job title, your years of experience, and any specific educational skills that are relevant to mention for the specific roles that you're going for. For example, let's say you're a teacher. You could write something like a dynamic teacher with a master's in further education who has 10 years experience working in primary schools with a particular focus on special needs children. Or let's say you're a clinical specialist, you could say a PhD educated clinical specialist with 5 years experience writing clinical evaluation reports for orthopedic and wound care devices, adaptable and able to work under strict deadlines. You see here that we're not using basic throwaway terms, but instead we're demonstrating your exact skill set and area of expertise in one paragraph. It can be a bit lengthier than the examples I've given you, of course, but this hopefully just serves as a starter for you to base your personal statement off of. So now we've got your information and your opening statement sorted, we're going to move on to the main content of your resume. So here's a visual of what a standard resume will typically look like. And as we've already covered your personal statement, we're going to move on to the key skills and the experience. Now, in this section, these might be shorter keywords that you've got experience in. So you might be lead auditor qualified, you might hold NEBOSH certification, first aid trained, Six Sigma, anything that you've had exposure to here and worth mentioning, put it down alongside any key milestones you might have achieved. So if you're in sales, you could have been top biller in your sales role, or you might have onboarded over 100 employees in a 12-month period if you're in recruitment. These should be things that are capturing attention here. So not a list of absolutely everything, just things that you're really proud of, those achievements and those key skills. Onto the job section, you might have a really long career history. And I appreciate you probably want to make sure you get every piece of information in there so that your employer knows how great you are. But please don't fall into that trap because your CV is meant to be the teaser. It's the part which gets them interested, that highlight reel or the advert which promotes the film. The goal is to give them enough to want to find out more and then to call you and arrange the interview. And the interview is where you can go into all sorts of detail. So for the content, we will just be listing your jobs, your experience, and your achievements. Now, importantly, this has to be, this has to be in order of your most recent job to your oldest job, not the other way around. If you're a manager now, you definitely don't want the first job on your resume showing that you worked as an assistant 8 years ago. So keep the most recent job first. Now, the best way to talk through your job history is to try and have a good mix of achievements in the job and then a few key points from your job description as well. So let's take a sales job again as an example. It might be one resume that says you were responsible for calling prospects and increasing new business. But to make this better, you could say achieved a dial out time averaging 2 hours per day and increased new business by 15% per month, onboarding at least one new client monthly. If you can see, you're using facts, figures, numbers, stats to back up your point and keeping it juicy, but keeping it honest as well. Another example, let's say that you are a hairdresser. You might say responsible for upselling products But a better, juicier way to say that is implemented upsell challenges across the team, which saw product sales improve from 5 to 24% per month. Hopefully, you can see the difference, that you're demonstrating why you, what you can bring, and what good you have done in each company that will be relevant and make the new company think, I want to interview that person. Of course, not every single point can be like this, and some might be a little bit more on the job description side, but my advice would be to try and keep it about a 70-30 ratio. You might have also noticed the use of action verbs in my examples, and these are really great too. This is because recruiters and hiring managers are scanning your resume for impact. So long as it's true, using words such as led, implemented, improved, delivered, all of these action verbs are really great to be included. So maybe have a Google, have a look at action verbs that you can use and include those when writing your resume. Now, once you've written your job section, have a read through it. And the rule of thumb is if it sounds like a job description, rewrite it. But if you can read it and you can tell clearly where you've made things happen in your career, then you've got it bang on. Keep it as it is. Next up, really short section, but super important, is we want to highlight your. So for this, I would literally just say the school or university that you went to, the years that you were at that school or university, and your results, whether that was a first, a 2-1, a distinction, whether it was a pass, whether you did a PhD. Just listing this really clearly underneath the section where you've already mentioned all of your roles, I believe is the perfect place to position it. Next up is references. Now, this might divide opinion, but I personally don't see the need for you to say references available on request at the bottom of your resume. If employers want one, they'll ask you for it. If you really want to list it, you can. For example, if you've got 2 people that you know will go to bat for you and they're really happy with their name and their email being shared on your resume, go for it. But personally, I would suggest leaving this out. And if people want it, they will ask for it. And then at the bottom of your CV, hobbies and interests. At the end, I always think this is a nice thing to include because it gives that employer the chance to know a little bit more about what you like. It doesn't have to be too formal. It's just really good for your employer to know a bit about you. And it's a good conversation starter as well. So don't make it too long. It can be a couple of sentences about what you enjoyed. For example, you might be a member of the National Trust and you like hiking and long walks in your spare time, or you might be a singer for a local band with a passion for making others dance and have a good time. Just something that shows a little bit about your character and adds a bit more personality to your resume as well. So that's the majority of what needs to be included in your resume. But there's also been a lot of common questions that came up when I shared this with my network. So to get through them, here's a quick fire round of common questions and answers for you. Number 1, do I need a photo? No, absolutely not. If you have one, take it out. You want to remove any chance of bias, so take your photo out. What font type and size? Anything that's professional, really. I don't know how you say it. Calibri? That's typically what I use, or Arial. And the font size, I would go for 11, maybe 12. How many pages should my resume be? I would say it's tricky. It depends on how many years experience that you've got, but typically no more than 3 pages. If it's any longer, look at where you can cut this down. Do I need my entire career history or just relevant jobs for the applied role? Let's assume you've already worked in this industry and you have done for a few years. I would still include prior roles that weren't aligned, but just don't go into as much detail. Some resumes where people have years of experience, they simply list the company and the job title and the years that they worked there to keep their resume more concise, and that they've just included the last 5 to 6 years in more detail. You don't want to leave gaps if the job is going into a new area, as I'm sure you'll have skills that will cross over. But if you've had a role years ago, then just don't put it in as much detail. 1 or 2 bullet points will be totally fine. I really hope this video has been helpful. And if you'd like to download a free CV template, then I've included the link in my description. And if you found this helpful, please drop a comment telling me your biggest struggle when it comes to your career so that I can create more useful content for you. See you in the next video.